To steal a phrase from my guest today, let me ask you a question. What do you see when you look in the mirror? Is it just a reflection of your appearance, or is it something more? Today, I'm super excited to have Jay Suggs on the show. And I'll tell you what, people, Jay reached out to me and he wanted to have this conversation about leadership in a mirror. And I, of course, jumped at the opportunity because, as you're going to see, Jay is a thought leader in leadership. He has a slew of experiences and he looks at it a different way. So today, we're going to talk about this leadership in a mirror. What do you see? And if you're not seeing the right things, who can you bring into your life to dig deeper and find the way to be the best leader you can be? So without further ado, Jay, welcome to the show. Why don't you take a second to introduce yourself to everybody?
Thank you. I'm Jay Suggs, founder of Suggcess Consulting and Leadership in Transition. I help high-performing leaders and teams navigate the space between who they've been, who they're becoming without burning themselves out or even losing themselves.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So, Jay, tell us a little bit about why this was on your heart to talk about leadership as a mirror.
You know, what's interesting, man, leadership is noisy, it's loud, it's overwhelming, it's distracting, right? Even though leadership is known to be the beacon that is supposed to rally individuals and point people in the right direction and give them guidance, it is the most distracting role that you can have because you're being pulled for so many directions. Leaders don't usually have the time to ask themselves real, grounded questions to understand I like to call it the blur that they're in. Let me explain. I checked every metric in my corporate career: revenue, performance, promotions. The higher I went, the more disconnected from myself I felt. Not because I wasn't grateful on paper of how successful I was, because it was so fast paced, pulling me in so many directions, but I'd even never ask myself, was I okay? Was I aligned with what was happening on paper? And believe it or not, you cannot perform leadership. You have to embody it. And you do that by facing the mirror, asking yourself questions. How am I? Who am I when nobody's around? Is it okay if I don't get an applause? Is it okay if my impact is not loud enough, but I know that it's affecting the people that it needs to affect? A series of questions like that is how I began on this journey of leadership and transition.
That's a great story. And I tell you, as someone who studies leadership and is very passionate about it, I find that a lot of times leaders get in this role because they're the expert at whatever. And they're just promoted because they're good at doing something, not at being something, being there for others. And ultimately, I mean, the textbook definition of leadership is getting someone to do something they normally wouldn't do. Well, I don't even like that textbook definition because it shows hierarchy, it shows dominance, it shows all these things. Really, I would like to say that a leadership is there to facilitate somebody to do something that needs to be done. And when we get caught up in this, like, pushing forward metrics, like you mentioned, and climbing the corporate ladder and whatever it is that leadership has evolved to in our society today, we do lose that connection. So talk a little bit about, what was the mirror for you and what started you from doing leadership to being a leader?
I think it is all rooted in validation, right? Our titles, our roles, the little signature on your email, right? It gives us some form of fulfillment, but it really isn't fulfillment. It is what I call transparency. It's called transparency of nothingness. It's not tied to anything, right? I became a global director. I'll never forget this. I became the global director of inclusion and belonging for Fortune 500 organization. It was the highlight of my career, right? Everybody's high-fiving me, right? Everybody's like, good job, Jay. I felt nothing, Bobby. A kid from Newark, New Jersey, becoming a global director for a multi-million-dollar organization, and I felt nothing because the validation that I was yearning for was external and not internal, right? Performatively, I checked the box. But is that what my soul wanted? Right? We talk about authenticity. Authenticity doesn't mean you tell everyone everything. It means being internally aligned before you speak externally. And as leaders, we don't speak to ourselves. What do I want? What does that look like? Is what I want, is it going to be agreeable to what everybody else wants for me? Sometimes we determine what we want based on everyone else's expectations. You know, leaders overshare when they're seeking validation. I think aligned leaders speak when they have this precision. So for me, is when I, you know, let's just say I went into the room of giants and I still felt empty inside. I was still thinking I was going to feel satisfied and get this applause, but I never got it. Never got
Mm,
it.
mm. And you were at a place where you couldn't even applaud yourself. You couldn't go back and look at all those things because, again, a lot of times when we chase these dreams, and you said chase the expectations of others, well, that's an empty chase because you never know what someone
Never.
expects of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so. And I talked to so many people, and I was there myself,
Yeah.
always searching for a pat on the back, even to the point where I was searching for it, but then when I got it, I would shrug it off and I'd be like, well, what's next? What's
Right.
next? What's next?
Right.
And I never once took a moment to look at who I was. I mean, in coaching, we talk about the why over the
Yeah.
what, and it's probably overplayed in some circles. But at the end of the day, why are we doing what we're doing? That doesn't mean you can't be a leader, an executive, or whatever, and still be a leader. But I think in the modern day culture, it's pushing us away from that, right? Because you said it's all about titles and certifications. I told you before we came on here, I live in the DC metro area. What you have before and after your name is more important than your name.
Yeah. It's
I,
about, to me, it's about alignment, not credentials, right? And it took me
yeah,
to really understand what that concept meant. I mean, here's the interesting thing too. When you think about leaders and what they're faced with today, I also think there's also a challenge about your upbringing, your programming, your conditioning. Most of these systems that we work in are high performance, right?
hmm
So it's an outward gesture. We never talk about reflection in leadership. If you look at all the leadership frameworks and all the training, everything that they talk about and discuss and train is outwardly.
yeah,
Outwardly. Nothing says take a pause, ask yourself a series of questions. What are you feeling? What is triggering you? Right? We don't use the word trigger in leadership.
no,
We use the word activation in leadership, right?
yeah,
And I think right now what we're facing in this current climate, that I think when COVID happened, the day of the manager started to disappear and the leader had to arrive. And the reason for that is because when COVID hit, everyone was impacted. Didn't matter your zip code, where you were from, who your parents were. Everyone we knew was impacted by COVID. So then managers had to start doing something that they never did before, checking in on their people. How are you doing? Do you need anything? Do you need more time? How can I help you? Right. And we had to meet people where we are, and we had to start using this muscle that a lot of leaders struggle with called empathy. Right. And empathy is not sympathy. And I always say that empathy is not just feeling sorry for someone. Empathy is saying, hey, if I was in that same situation that someone is in front of me is in, how would I feel and how would I like to be spoken to? Right? Think about it.
yep,
Bobby, when I think about layoffs right now, right? It's a big thing in business. People are getting laid off every day. It's an unfortunate thing, right? My grandmother used to say, if you got bad news, give it to me good. That's what she used to say. And when I think about, I've been in many conversations of reduction in force, right? And I always, before I speak to someone, I always used to say, how would I want someone to convey and deliver this news to me? And the answer was always the same: be human. Every time I used to speak to an individual, when I had to have that hard conversation, I used to say, this does not define you. This has nothing to do with who you are as a person, your character. I know it stings. I know it sucks. I know it's uncomfortable, but this moment right here does not define you, because you're going to make it to the other side. Right. And I think it's a series of sequences like that with leaders today where We have to be human leaders, not just performance leaders.
Yeah, there's so much in there that's of value. And the first thing I'd like to pull on is, the quiet time for a leader to ask themselves
Yeah.
questions. You do see people now say, oh, take a pause day, a day of no meetings, a day of this so you can think. But what is that followed up with? Think about how you can grow your business. Think about new goals. Think about
Right.
new innovations. Think about this. Not one time have I ever heard someone, why don't you think about, am I going where I want to be? Am I
Mhm.
taking care of my people?
Mhm.
Am I developing my empathy? I mean, you name it, a lot of those things you just talked about. And so when we got that situation where managers, and let's face it, Jay, I'll be the first to say it, most leadership today that's taught is just management to a point.
Absolutely.
But
It's managing performance and metrics and milestones, but it's not guiding, facilitating, and navigating individuals.
yeah, and that is yeah, and then that's why those uncomfortable conversations go, because normally when they let someone go in the riffs and stuff that you were talking about earlier, it's not a performance of the person, it's a performance of the organization.
Right.
So if you're a leader in a situation like that, you I would want to sit down and think, well, what could I have done to avoid this? Because again, as a leader, I see myself as responsible for all those on my, I hate the word team, but let's just use team for that example.
No, well, Bobby, I see where you're going, and I think it's a valid point. Listen, as a leader and being in that position myself, I didn't want to let anyone go. Right? They're under my charge. They have people that they're responsible for. The problem is that, like you said, the system has a business decision, so you have to have those tough conversations. But I also put myself in this light. Anything that has happened to me unexpectedly has always guided me towards my purpose. And I believe
Mhm.
that to the individuals when I used to have those hard conversations. I know what I'm saying to you right now is not what you want to hear, but there's brighter days. It's not going to feel bright today. It may not even feel bright 12 months from now. But because of this conversation, it's going to change the trajectory in your life, in your professional life, your personal life. And it's going to be better than this moment right here. I strongly believe that. You cannot perform leadership. People feel what's real. So
Mhm.
either if it's good news, bad news, current not good news, they feel it. And that's the thing with leadership. We have to feel more and stop managing. Because when you're managing, when you think about management, right, Bobby, what are you literally managing? You're managing processes, you're managing numbers, you're managing targets. You can't control any of those without the individual. So if you got high anxiety and you're managing, guess what? Your anxiety is through the roof.
Yep.
You're not in control. I had someone told me, Jay, I want to be a leader. I said, why? They was like, I want to make a lot of money. Wrong answer, my man. Wrong answer. If I don't hear things like I want to serve, I want to help, I want to guide, I want to assist, I want to support, right? Then it might not be your path. It's a serving, selfless role. And what a lot of people don't see about leadership on the inside and behind the scenes, it's harder to lead yourself to lead people. Your mindset, your nervous system. Oh my goodness, Bobby, your nervous system,
Yep. Yep.
right? You get this unexpected email and it's going to affect your team, and you got to figure out, how do I filter this chaos so it doesn't impact them in a way where they're distracted to do their job?
Yep.
Your nervous system is on high alert each and every day as a leader, each and every day. If there's a leader that says, "Oh, I just take it as it comes," then you are numb and you are not paying attention,
Yep.
because you will feel you're Velcro. You're Velcro.
And not only will you feel, however you feel about something will translate to the others around you at that particular time. The way
All
you
day.
react, the Stoic, I've been really diving deep lately into Stoic philosophy, and they say there's two things you can control. What you think about and then how you act on it. And this is so valuable to this conversation because, you said earlier, what can you control? Processes, da, 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 da. You really can't control any of those when you think about it, because if you're in a business of sales, it's up to the consumer, and the consumer either buys or doesn't. It's really binary, and you're trying so hard to do these processes and things because they worked yesterday. And we say this a lot of
Yeah.
time, and what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
But yet we forget that, because in these big corporate environments, and especially under these leadership, or the way we define it now, and these incentives and everything we give, we're just making leaders focus on what they really can't control. But what can you control? What you think about and how you act. And then once you
Love that,
mastered
Bob.
that, or get a little better, because I don't think we can ever master that, then we can do that empathy role. Well, if I lay this news on Jay, what is he going to think about it? And then
Right.
how is he going to act? And if we ask ourselves even those two questions before we gave any kind of news, we always say good news, bad news. Who are we to say what is good or bad to somebody, right? But
Right.
if I could anticipate, again, in a little bit, get to know your personality, whatever. If I can anticipate how you may act or think about something, it may change the way I communicate it to you.
Absolutely. Listen, most leaders aren't confused, Bobby. They're conflicted.
Yeah.
They got information coming to them by the minutes, each and every day. And they got to figure out how to be the facilitator of all that information, and also protect psychologically, make sure their team is safe based on that information that they convey each and every day. If leadership feels heavy, I always tell leaders, if it feels heavy, make sure and confirm you're not carrying the expectations of others.
Yeah.
Right? My grandmother used to say, you can't carry what ain't yours, right? Leadership, we tend to carry things that are not ours. I'll give you an example, just for the audience, because I think they'll understand. In my corporate life, there's a number, there's a target that the team has to hit. It's an annual number, annual goal. But for some reason in a corporate system, we check that annual goal every freaking week. It's an annual goal. Remember that, Bobby. But we check it every single week. Now, some might say, well, Jay, what about the shareholders? Right? Absolutely. Let's check it quarterly. Right? But when we check it every week, we check it with the leader. And then you know what that leader does? That leader checks it with the team every week. Sometimes the news that the employee gave you is not going to change from 7 days to the next, but you keep checking it. This is what erodes culture, erodes morale. When you check a target every week, you know what you're telling that employee? I don't trust you. I don't believe the words that are coming out of your mouth. Even though you have a CRM system that shows me that this will close when it closes, and I don't believe you. And in fact, I don't believe you that I'm going to keep asking you every week, right? And then by the end of the year, when the numbers hit and everybody's high-fiving, do you know why the employees still feel nothing? Because we took the soul out of their achievements. We took the soul out of all the hard work and efforts that we don't see on a spreadsheet. And that's why they go right to the next. Nobody sits and revels in the celebration of what they accomplished that year. Every major company does it. Every major company does it. And as a leader, I got to decide, do I want to check this week with my team or what I just asked them last week? When I was a leader, I could be transparent with you, Bobby. Whatever the higher ups want, all I used to ask myself is that what my team needs right now?
Yeah.
And if they didn't need it, then I didn't convey it. I could say that now though, because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not an employee, but but I had the time and be aligned. And also you got to know the pulse of your team. Where is your team at?
Yeah.
Mentally, right? Performative, of course, you can see it on the screen, but where they're at mentally. Are they stretched? Are they Are they dealing with the pressure of performing? Leaders have to stay grounded and be in their own mirror so they can reflect a better vision for their team. If you don't check on yourself, it's impossible to check on your team or the people
Yeah.
that you're in charge of. Do you agree?
Yeah. Oh, I'm a big proponent of self-leadership because you cannot lead others until you can lead yourself. Whether it's your mental state, your physical
Yeah.
state, your well-being in general. Like you said, when you get these, we see so many reactive leaders. Like they'll get somebody that's higher than them asking for this report, and then they'll scramble and and a lot of times you see, if you interrupt your team, you prevent progress even if it's for a couple minutes or 2 minutes, an hour or whatever they have to do with some report, like you said, checking these metrics. And I also rail on metrics. I think metrics are great if they're appropriately set. But if it isn't, like you said, an annual metric, why check it every day? Why check it every week? You do have to do some checks along the way because you can then, but you know what? You don't check it as a success or a failure at that point. You
Yeah.
can then analyze and say, well, what can we do to help Bobby out? He's struggling right now, or this do we send another person to explain it or whatever? But we don't look at it that way because we just look at closing and profits and numbers, but we don't look at the why to the why we not be hitting those numbers.
Right.
And for a leader, I think it's really important to understand. And one thing I think that can help a lot of leaders is remember when you were the teammate.
Yeah.
Remember the situation that you were in when I came to you or someone came to you and asked you for something and it ruined your day or it got you off track or it diminished your morale, whatever it was.
Right.
But you know what? I don't understand why we forget when we were in that position. When we get, and I'm guilty of it, or I've been guilty of it when I get in a
Right.
leadership role, because again, it's this whole stress environment. But in reality, you being there for them, like I said, assisting them to the goal is far more important. So I think this is really important when you're looking into a mirror. So what would you tell a leader? Like what are some tips you could give them for looking in this mirror to seeing where they're at and improving on who they are?
Well, first thing I would say before you begin the mirror, right? You got to understand that performance is borrowed energy. Conviction is renewable. Performance is borrowed energy. Conviction is renewable. Someone called me a motivational speaker the other day. I was flattered, but I'm not a motivational speaker, right? It's the equivalent of chocolate. You eat it and then it's gone. What I believe in is conviction, right? Being tied to your core values and the thing that drives you and motivates you. So when I talk about the mirror, here are some questions you can ask yourself as a leader. Do I want to make an impact or do I want the applause? Sit with that one.
Mm.
Do I want to make an impact or do I want the applause? Most leaders are performing to be seen and to feel safe. Newsflash, you'll never get that. I don't care who your leader is. I don't care what organization you work for. No one will ever make you feel seen and safe but the person you're looking at in the mirror.
Mm.
So a lot of leaders is like, if I perform this way, if we hit our numbers this way, I'm in with the clique. I'm good with the group. Titles don't protect you. Promotions don't give you security. It doesn't exist, right? It's this false sense of validation of being seen. So the question is, do I want to make an impact or do I want to get an applause? Right?
Right.
Second question, what is it about this individual or team that reminds me of myself? And why do I want to change it? So when you're dealing with a mirror, leadership's a mirror, right? Normally, leaders may have individuals on their team or the people that they're in charge with, and for some reason, let's just say it's a very challenging dynamic. More often than not, it's not really about that individual. It's about what that individual is reflecting about yourself and your leadership. For example, I had a young lady on my team many years ago. She was what you call an introvert by definition. I was an animated sales leader, high fives, like Boiler Room, just the movie, just real amp. She was crushing it. I remember I would give her these accolades and I would give her all these big ups and high fives, but she wasn't giving it back to me, Bobby. I couldn't feel it. I was like, what's wrong with her? She just hit her number. She just hit the target. She's just mild mannered. I don't love it. So I had a one-on-one with her one day. I said, hey, like, you're crushing it. You're like the number one rookie in the country. I don't understand. You're not giving me your loving this vibe. She said to me clearly, well, Jay, I don't receive accolades like most people. I don't do what I do for anybody else but for myself. I do celebrate, but to myself. I get a glass of red wine. I have myself a nice steak and I eat it by myself at the bar. And that's celebratory for me. I don't need the big production. Me doing my job is not a big event. It's just what I get paid to do. Shut me down, Bobby. I said, oh. She was like, why should I operate the way you operate? I'm me, you're you. One of the hardest, firm, direct lessons I got in leadership that day. Not everyone on your team is like you. The way you think someone is supposed to behave or operate or perform is a bias. You got to meet people where they're at, right? If you ever notice, leaders tend to hire people that are like themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the mirror, right? She was not my mirror. I'm extrovert. She's introvert, right? But I learned something very, very valuable. Everyone receives information differently. Everyone wants to be celebrated differently. Everyone has a different motivation of why they do what they do. And money is different for everybody. What it means to you, what it means to me, right? Money is not everyone's motivation. Just because you're in business doesn't mean that's everyone's motivation. Believe it or not, Bobby, some people actually like to do the work.
Yeah.
They just want to do the work.
And why do we not just let them? It's like,
why don't we just leave them alone, right?
Yeah. I in my military career, it was all about promotions and promotions, and some people just never wanted to do it. And even when I was a young person, I asked a guy, I was like, why don't you want to get promoted? And he's like, because I like where I'm at.
Oh,
and I mean, what a great, as someone now in my late 40s. I'm just now starting to like where I'm at. Imagine that. You're 20-something-year-old person, but we were trying to force them to be us. And like you said, we do seem to hire. I mean, that's why nepotism's a thing, right? You hire people that you get along with or whatever. But you know what? Again, if you do that too often, not only does it make you an ineffective leader, because when you get a person like you talked about, the young lady, you miss it. But yet at the same time, she was one of the most critical people on your team.
Oh, and valuable. She's gone on to do such amazing things. But the interesting thing too about, I always also, with the work that I do with leaders, one of the other mirror questions I said, if like no one's watching, right? If no one's watching, what would you change first? Right? If performance didn't matter, being in the financial meetings, right? What would you change first? And every time a leader tells me what they change first, it is the most pivotal thing that is seen more visibly of what they do. And a leader said to me, I would change how I speak in the room. I was like, well, let's unpack that. What do you mean by that? I probably wouldn't be so loud. And I was like, well, why are you loud? He was like, I said, are you a loud person naturally? He's like, no, actually, I'm not. I'm loud because I always felt in these rooms, whoever's the loudest is the first one to get seen. So that question always stuns my clients. Like, if no one was watching, what is the first thing you would change? And it's normally the thing that they put out in the forefront first when it comes to their presence. Like another question is, what is it that keeps getting postponed with you? A lot of leaders tell me, oh, I want to go hiking, or, I want to travel the world, or I promised my kids we would go on this, go on a family trip and things like that. I ask that, those are the questions I ask in the mirror process, because you need to understand there's a direct correlation of what you do, what your title says, and who you think you are. Out of those three, the only thing that really matters, it's not the title, it's not how you get paid, is who do you see in the mirror? And that's a journey, that's a process. And I always ask, who did you promise? Like, what did you promise yourself? Like, who you wouldn't become? Why did you promise yourself you wouldn't become this? Right? When I first got into leadership, I had a senior leader tell me, you wear your emotions on your sleeve, and you need to protect the interests of the organization instead of the people. It was like a dagger right here, Bobby. I was like, hold up, I'm a people leader. It's the job. Yeah, but it's career suicide. That's what I was told. I was told it was career suicide to put the people first.
Mm.
I guess I'm jumping off that building then. Because it went against my core value. It went against my purpose. It went against what I believed in, right? And here's another thing. We hide behind these titles and these roles and these responsibilities. But behind all that, there lies the person. And you're going to have to continue to deal with that person each and every day of your life. So who do you want to become? So the mirror is asking these questions so you can get to the shift. Like I finally understand of who I want to become, what it feels like, what it looks like. And then we go to the shift. How do I start putting this into practice? Right? And then from the shift, you go into the movement. And that's what leadership in transition is. It's not a framework. It's not a coaching program. It's an intentional pause to get back to being aligned internally. Like I said before, leaders are not confused. They are conflicted each and every day.
Yeah, it's and it's sad, and I like, who do I want to become? And then a counter to that, which may be helpful for some people, is, who do I not want to become? And you and I talked about this before we started taping.
Yeah.
If you know what you don't want to become, it may help you decide what you want to become, because none of us, probably in our 20s, right out of college, right out of high school, wherever you are in life, we're like, I want to be a leader where I sit in meetings all day long and have no time for myself, no time for friends, no time for anything. But along and along, that's what we became, because that's what we're, quote unquote, supposed to do, right? But, you always meet that one outlier in the executive circle who, takes the 3-week vacations, goes kayaking, sometimes doesn't even wear shoes to work. And
I was always envious of that person. Always.
Yeah. Well, why do we need to be envious of that person? If that's who we want to be, why not we want to be it? Obviously, it worked for them because we're so scared of being different. There's all these ad campaigns that say think differently or do things differently, but in reality, nobody wants you to do differently, because you do something different and eventually you all become the same person, right? I heard the analogy one time, your friend wants to get in shape, so he joins CrossFit. Well, how long does it take for them to stop focusing on wanting to get in shape to start looking like everyone in CrossFit? You wear the same clothes, you use and I'm not down in anything here, I'm just using it as an example. But where did we lose that purpose? Because it's very easy in groupthink and synergy and all the things that go on to lose our focus. So maybe a way to look at it, a different mirror, would be, what do I not want to become?
Absolutely. Listen, I always say, when I think about my leadership career, I always say I had leaders who taught me what I didn't want to be, what I did not want to be, right?
Yeah.
Interesting thing, you was talking about the individual on vacation. What's interesting? In my former life, not taking your PTO was like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Right? Look, company, I'm here. I didn't even take my PTO. And then every year, when you got to take more PTO, it's like you're sending a love letter to yourself. I'll take that vacation soon enough, right? So one of the questions too, I always ask clients is like, who benefits when you stay in performance? Think about that question. Who benefits when you stay in performance? It's not you. Everything externally benefits, but do you benefit when you stay in performance? No, you're drained, depleted, right? Your cup is not even full because the glass is cracked. So, if the applause stopped, would your leadership still make sense? I've coached some leaders who are what we call high performers. They're killing it, crushing it on paper. But I asked the leader the other day, if the applause stopped, right? Does your leadership approach make sense?
Yeah.
He said to me, I'm hard on my team more than I should be. Right? So the mirror is really asking yourself hard questions to get to the root. And a lot of people I know may feel, Jay, this, we got to hit our numbers. We got to perform. This may be soft. This may be too sensitive, too sentimental, too introspective. Yeah, there is no target is going to be hit, no metric that's going to be performed if your leaders are conflicted. They will just what I call be continuing maintenance. It's almost like autopilot. I'll just do enough so it looks a certain way. I'll perform enough so it looks a certain way, but I won't excel internally. I won't evolve through this continuous journey. You ever notice in business, people say, our numbers have been flat 5 years over. 5 years in a row, our numbers have been flat. You know why they've been flat? Because your leaders have not evolved. That's why. That's why your numbers, they have not had a different lens and perspective on how they approach the business. Because they're too busy having that internal conflict with themselves. Perform, purpose. You could do both, but the only way you can do both, perform and have a purpose, is to be transparent with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. There's no expiration date and there is no magic bullet or magic formula when we talk about the continuous journey of leadership, but it is a practice. It's not a movement. It's not a program. It's a practice that you have to continuously do each and every day. I encourage every leader, I don't care what industry, what level, even if you're not a leader of people, you have to regulate yourself every day. And listen, I'm no clinical expert or anything like that. I'm not talking about anything clinical. I'm talking about asking yourself questions that are rooted in understanding what you're motivated by, who are you shaped by, what is the vision for yourself as a person, as a professional, as your team? What does that mean?
Yeah, I would even say that every single one of us is a leader, and we lead the most important person that can make the greatest impact on the world, and that's ourselves.
All day.
We think that everyone's always going to have a boss, but you are your leader. And when you lead yourself, not only will you be able to show up for others, you'll be able to contribute more. You'll be able to ask yourself these hard questions. You'll be able to look in a mirror and say, what am I today? And you know what? Let's be honest. There's going to be some days you don't like it. That's okay. That is okay. Because you can change it. What you don't like, you can't change. But until you recognize it, until you keep seeking the applause, you keep seeking the next, what's next, you're not going to change it because that seems like an obstacle. Well, the obstacle isn't what's next. The obstacle is what you want to change. So for all those out there listening, use a mirror. You can start asking yourself these questions, and it's hard. So get yourself a coach. Get someone like Jay to ask them for you. Because why is therapy and coaching so important right now? Because it reveals things about ourselves that we know, but we're either too scared to admit or too distracted to, go out and go after it ourselves. So find that mirror. Right. For those of you who can do it for yourself, awesome. And eventually I think everyone can get there, right? If you practice some of those questions.
Listen, Bobby, you just had a soundbite. The mirror doesn't judge. It doesn't judge. It reveals.
Mm,
The mirror doesn't judge. It reveals, right? And if a question, somebody asked me, Jay, how do I know the mirror part is working? Right? I say it's really simple. If the question makes you uncomfortable, it's probably the right question.
mm. Wow. Wow.
That's
Wow.
probably the right question.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because if your immediate reaction is to get offended, why? Why are you so scared of that question? Why are you so
Right.
scared? Because again, it's not questioning the work you do, but it's questioning something deeper. It's questioning who you are. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you can't like and love yourself, you can't follow the golden rule. You can't treat others as yourself, because if you don't like yourself, how are you going to treat others like that? And I think a lot of leaders, if they're honest with themselves, they don't like themselves. And it doesn't take massive changes. It doesn't mean quit your job or quit this.
Incremental steps.
Yeah,
Incremental steps. Yeah.
maybe you're like this one guy who wanted to speak more softly in a room.
Yeah.
Maybe you try it and then see where that goes. And again, all these things don't. So many people want to burn the bridges. They want to burn everything down. But that's a lot like motivation. It's a lot like the chocolate analogy. That's an emotion too. When you
Yeah.
get hit with something, it's
Yeah.
going to be emotional. It's going to be crazy. That's not when you act on it. That's when you take this pause that we talked about earlier and sit down and think and ask more questions. Like, again, everyone wants a get it now, done today,
Oh, yeah.
immediate result.
Instant gratification. You know, the interesting thing when people notice when I work with people and they start to mirror, right? I say, hey, when you first start this, um, you're not going to be honest with yourself. What do you mean? I'm going to be brutally honest. You're not. I said, you're not going to be honest with yourself before you start this mirror phase, this pathway, as I called it. Um, but you got to ask yourself this disclaimer before you start. And they go, okay, what is it? I say, before you fix anything, ask yourself, what am I protecting?
Mm,
You got to say that before you start the mirror,
yeah.
right? And normally when individuals go through the mirror, they say things like, I need better time management. That's not a mirror. A task. That's a process-driven gesture. That's not a
Right.
mirror. Or they'll say, I want to go to director to senior director. That's not a mirror. You're still performing.
Right.
What are you trying to protect as you're looking in this mirror? You got to be fully vulnerable,
Mm,
right? You got to be fully, fully vulnerable. I'll just share just a little bit. When I became a leader in corporate America, I'm not scholarly, I don't have a PhD. You know, my journey has been very different, very, very different, a lot of different type of careers. And I used to sit in these rooms and I used to say, I'm just a kid from Newark, New Jersey. What the hell am I doing in these rooms full of giants? What am I doing in this room? I don't belong here. And there's this thing called imposter syndrome that it gets a bad rap, right? The term itself, right? I don't think the terminology is wrong. I think it's a signal that something's off with you, that you're not being authentic. So I used to sit in these rooms and all of a sudden I turned to the 11-year-old boy that's from Newark, New Jersey. Now I'm in awe of what I'm seeing, not realizing all these individuals have their own makeup, their own challenges, their own insecurities, right? And I'm sitting in there and I'm looking at them like they're giants, right? As you do the mirror and you go through that journey, you start to realize you're a freaking giant too. Whenever you're having a bad day, there's a couple of things I tell my clients. Number one, I want you to take out a piece of paper, blank, draw a line, and I want you to write where you started, where you're at now, and where you want to go. The exercise is not a vain exercise. It's an exercise to remind you that you're doing better than you think you are. The second exercise, when you're having a real bad day, close your eyes, think about something that you went throughout your life, As you went through it, it was horrible. You didn't even know how you was going to make it to the other side, but somehow, some way, you did. And then open your eyes. You're way better than when you started, when you had that dark moment.
Mm.
The third thing I tell people, you feel like you're suffering, feel like you're struggling, go help somebody less fortunate than you in any way. Coach, guide, assist, support, give, go help somebody. That struggling feeling will go away. It will dissipate. Trust me, it'll disappear as you're serving. Leaders are the beacon that rallies everyone behind a single thought so things can happen. But in order for those things to happen, we got to make sure they're happening internally within ourselves.
Mm.
Look inward, then you don't have to perform outwardly. Your presence, it vibrates, it radiates. It's a natural progression. I believe leadership right now in this current climate is being challenged because we're being pulled in so many directions. But we need to cover our ears, block out the noise, and listen to ourselves.
Jay, such beautiful advice, and I hope this helps people get a mirror and start really exploring who they are, where they want to be, and the why. And I'll give you an opportunity, but I think we've dropped so much on people now. I think it's a good place to close it. We're going to bring, you've brought up so many topics. I'm definitely going to have you back on again if you'd be gracious with your time and come back on and we can talk about other things. But is there anything you want to leave people with?
Yeah. If there's one thing I like to leave people with is that you don't need to perform to lead. Alignment does the heavy lifting.
Mm.
You don't need to perform to lead. Alignment does the heavy lifting. I'm Jay Suggs, Suggcess Consulting, Leadership in Transition. You can reach me at iamjaysuggs.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I am Jay Suggs. I'm here to help. I can walk with you through this path and find some clarity and help you see what you already know.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you.
No. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And I do encourage everyone, check this guy out. He's phenomenal. It may not always be what you want to hear, but again, what we learned today, look in the mirror. Maybe it's exactly what you need to hear. And that's what self-leadership is about, finding those areas in your life to make yourself better, make yourself happier. You all deserve happiness. We all deserve it. It's a concept that we're all chasing, but very few of us are willing to put in the work to go get it. So
Absolutely.
lead yourself, look in that mirror, constantly improve yourself and watch what happens. I think we could start a movement of gratitude, appreciation. The whole world could be better. I'm sure metrics would improve for all you corporate types. Just be who you are and find whatever you need. So Jay, again, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Bobby. I appreciate the conversation, brother.
Yeah, and for all you listening, as always, I'm Bobby. I look forward to further exploring self-leadership and how to make ourselves better leaders, not only for ourselves, but for everyone else that we lead. Lead with intention. Lead yourself this week. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody.